Hi, welcome back to my podcast. So I wanted to do a video, and I always like to talk about the really hard shit, actually, because I feel like that's what makes the best content, and it's just more informative for the person who's actually listening to what I'm saying. Because I feel like there's a place for fluff, and there's a place for great times, but with the law of contrast in life, you're going to inevitably come across negative situations in life, and I'm not going to make it like a super pessimistic video if I can, but I mean, I feel like I don't hear many people talking about, and this is lifing skills in general, the situation, if like when you have something really really dire happen to you as a person, how you deal with that is like obviously a chasm to your experience, but then when seeing someone else deal with something awful and like seeing everything that comes with that, I feel like it's just like a little bit more complex of a feeling, because you're sort of like, well, this isn't necessarily happening to me, but I am still affected and like traumatized by it. Do you know what I mean? And I think what comes with this as well, obviously, I swear I did a video on this yesterday, and it was carrying on through dysfunction, but I feel like there's more to it than just carrying on through dysfunction, because things do change you for life. Do you know what I mean? And being a witness to something is just as traumatizing as going through it yourself sometimes. And what it comes down to, you get people out of alignment, people that are doing things wrong, people that attack you out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? People that've got no understanding of the law or what is right, or how to control their own emotions, or how to act with moral, with humanity. That's one aspect of things. You can bring narcissism into it. Often personality disorders have a lot to do with people going out of line and dysregulating themselves, but it's one of those things, because I think it's kind of a little bit more confusing, because you can think, oh well, this didn't necessarily happen to me, so on a level it's like, okay, so like what like bad stuff have you been through recently? And it's like, well, it wasn't that it happened to me, it was that I saw it happen to someone else, and I was sort of witness, and then I was sort of caught up in the crossfire to one degree or another. And it's really like it's one of those things where I feel like I've had like a massive bad experience happen to me, where it's not actually my experience that I've had. And I think when it comes down to karma, I feel like karma, right, what I notice, and I allow myself to lean into as much as I can, even when I'm closed-minded to it, is the fact that the universe supports everyone and everything in all of their experiences, even if they're going through negative experiences. But I feel like when people don't understand like the rules of karma and stuff like that, they don't understand that, and they don't understand that like everyone is served in all of their experiences. I'm not even going to make any disclaimers here. I'm just going to leave that as is, because I'm not going to like overly justify myself in that, because I don't feel the need to. It's just the sake that when people don't understand karma, they feel like when people think that the world revolves around them, and everyone else is at fault, instead of them. And I think that is when people, and I think back to school, and I think back to like the delusional attitudes of a lot of people, and that you just sort of had to sit there and like tolerate people's bullshit. And it's like, I don't want to sound too like childish, because I've like grown past this. A lot of people, when they go into adulthood, grow past this shit, and they grow up and they learn to conduct themselves in adulthood. But I think when you've got people in adulthood dealing with things like children, it's really weird, and that's unprocessed trauma within someone else. But I think, as I say, it's just it's something that I've not really seen before, but I think it's something I recognise now. When people don't understand things like karma, and they don't understand like what you give out comes back to you, like you will experience negative things if you do negative things to other people, and it's when other people don't see the justification in other people's experiences and other people's humanity, and then they go apeshit because they're basically throwing a toddler tantrum in adulthood. And it's so embarrassing, and it's so, like, this is why people are embarrassed, you know, to do things that create a scene and create this, that and the other. Like, narcissists love to humiliate people, they love to make other people look like they're the problem, and this is why it's always really important to, like, keep calm as possible when dealing with people with personality disorders. Just as a little disclaimer, that's my disclaimer. But I do think that, like, when people don't understand, like, the rules of karma, and they just, like, outwardly attack anyone that disagrees with their mindset, like, this is why, yeah, it's embarrassment. Like, there's a reason why people have, like, collective shame on people that don't get in line and don't follow the status quo, because it's just like the laws of contrast in one degree. But it's like, there is a real reason why, like, you should feel ashamed of your behavior if you're going that far out of line, because the law is one aspect of life. And I think the law will chasten many people when it comes to dealing with things that are wrong. They'll also deal with people, I've noticed, that don't actually do anything wrong, and persecute them anyway. But the law is not the epitome of moral ground, if you ask me. Like, you like to think that, you know, someone does something wrong, they go to prison, they break the law, they go to prison, they don't break the law, they don't go to prison. But in my experience, that's just not the case, and it's sort of it's a bit of a one-size-fits-all system, and there's a bit of a pattern to it, and unfortunately that's just the realities of life that we live in. But as I say, I feel like it's not, this is why I make this channel, because I like to talk about it from a more defined perspective than that, and make some opinions on it and things like that. You know, it's tricky when, you know, you come across people that are so traumatized, and I think this can come in many formats in my experience. Like, I've come across people that have been really traumatized to the point where they, you know, I think there's a lot of confusion as well with people that become traumatized and, like, deal with their mental health, and then they can feel moral shame in understanding themselves and, you know, growing into the person that they are. And then you get other people that just create a fuck ton of shit for other people because they have no time to dwell on their own consequences to their lives, and they've never felt any consequences to their own lives. And then, like, that's so fucked up. Like, that's such a fucked up situation. Like, people really should notice that that's an issue. You know, or, like, I notice it's an issue. It's a really fucked up thing. You know, we should not be, as I say, I don't want to talk we shouldn't, but I'm just making the point, you know, putting it into the universe. When people don't understand the rules of karma, you know, you can really get, like, and this is where it's so important to do the self-work and understand, and move from your own moral ground, because, like, you will not, necessarily, like, people will fuck you over. Like, as I say, I was trying to say, I've seen this in many different formats. Like, people will fuck you over if you cannot stabilize yourself and understand right from wrong and what is justified behavior and what's not justified behavior. Like, you know, it can really damage a person. Do you know what I mean? Like, it can really damage a person if a person is that attacked unnecessarily, and it can really hurt a person. Adult bullying is real. Like, you know, people do bully as adults, and it's really fucked up, and it's really disgusting. Like, there's one thing just, like, baiting and, like, narcissistic dynamics and narcissistic families and stuff, but you get these, like, toddler adults that, like, bully each other in adulthood, and it's so unsavory and it's so inappropriate, and it should be embarrassed. Like, you should feel embarrassed if you do that, because it's really unnecessary. You know, I'm not talking about standing up for a good moral standpoint. This is the contrast and the, what's the word, not even the contrast, the paradox and the warped mindset of, like, narcissists and stuff. Like, they will just do everything backwards. They'll do everything in a misfortunate way for other people. Like, you know, it's important to, like, the universe. Well, let's just open this up a little bit. I do want to talk about my experiences, but I just have to, sometimes when I'm processing things, I have to just see things in a level format, otherwise I can't process it fully. You know, you have to look at it like the universe is always on your side. It's always bringing you positive experiences in the terms of an opportunity to learn, Yeah, like I think we don't come across too many lessons at once. We may come across a big lesson at once, but I don't think you come across so many lessons that it's impossible to digest. That would be impossible, and I think a lot of the time in traumatized families and stuff, you see this a lot, where like families and people in families and stuff trying to like impart, quote unquote, impart their wisdom, or make their children learn the lessons that they've had to learn, and it's like, well, maybe they're not learning that way, and maybe they should learn other lessons, and the world doesn't want them to learn that lesson because it doesn't apply to them, and this is, I feel like, something that happens a lot, and possibly in older generations, so it's probably seen a lot. And I do see this, and I have experienced this myself, but it's just the case that, I've with that in mind, because I like to see things, this is why I talk about it, and I think it's good to see things in positive, in a light of, either, yes, there is a way to heal from this, most importantly, B, there is a way to learn from this, second most importantly, and C, I can avoid this again by X, Y, and Z, and I can talk about it, and I can share it, and I can, put into the universe that this is fucked, and this should not be happening. Injustices happen every day, do you know what I mean? But you have to put it in the context of your own life, and you have to, and I think that's the way I do it. If I can contextualize it into, it's like anything, in different areas of life, you're going to see more like crime in certain places in the world. You're going to see more, white collar crime in different areas of the world. You're going to see more people, in different parts of and places in life. You're going to see different negative things that happen more commonly, and that's one thing. And I think, it doesn't justify it though. This is always the outcome that I find. You might be able to, I wouldn't even say normalise it, because I feel like there's like a level of like, this is where things like phobias and things like, when I talk about phobias, I talk about like phobias like homophobia, like fucking ageism and fucking classism and this, that and the other comes about when you're not taking into account that there are other people in the same place that don't do those things, that don't cause issues that other people do. It's terrible to say everyone in a lower class area is poor and is like snatches benefits from the system and this, that and the other. Like that is like offensive towards people that have not got a high income, and it's the same that goes the other way. It's unfair to say that people of a high income have no interest in other people, or they're just do-gooders that have no interest in, the realities of what's actually going on elsewhere. That's also incorrect, and if people are going to have that distorted mind frame, then that's up to them, and it goes everywhere in between. Do you know what I mean? So I really don't like to make like mass judgments like that. And I really don't like to quote unquote normalise dysfunction. I literally did a video about this yesterday where I was talking about like, I just don't like to normalise dysfunction, because you can see it and you can be like, I don't like to normalise dysfunction because I think, it's justifying it elsewhere. It doesn't. You have to accept what you see. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. I did a video on it yesterday. And the videos I posted, it was yeah, a video I posted yesterday. But as I say, like, I think sometimes issues won't affect you if you're not directly close to it for long periods of time. And, there's a reason, as I say, for as well, like space between people and space between situations. And I think it's really, I don't know, because it's just when people, like, take the piss. I'm going to extend this a little bit. I feel like it's when people take the piss in places where, like, in some format or another, you can justify their actions. It's very much giving like narcissism, to be honest. It's very much, I feel like it's in the box of narcissism. I don't think we dare explain it in any other way. It's narcissism 1.0. That is what it is when it comes to dealing with dysfunction that I'm talking about, with what happened with me. But I've seen it in many different formats of people being completely out of order and then having to deal with that. So I've seen people in, for example, my familial dynamic. I'm not going to like place blame here, because I've done some healing, they've done some healing, to some degree things are tolerable in one degree or another. I'm not going to. I mean, it's dead. I've made peace with it being dead. If ever, peace and life returns to that dynamic where necessary, that is fine. But I've had to make peace with the fact that I've had to find parental figures elsewhere, and I've healed from that in every way that I possibly can, and I've made as much peace within that dynamic with them that I possibly can. And I can't change the realities of life. Realistically, it is what it is, and I feel like that's one of the things. I mean, let's start childhood, because I feel like it's like the same thing as I've experienced in childhood. I think in childhood, I don't even want to think straight to there, because I feel like my brain's a bit frazzled from this whole situation. But I think, yeah, that's one format of like grandiose, grandiose dysfunction where like you can justify it. Like, it's one of those things where like it's not against the law necessarily. Like, I'm not going to even bring the law into this, because people can do this shit and it can still be against the law, it cannot be against the law. It sucks when it's not against the law, when it's really fucked, because the law won't do anything sometimes, for whatever reason. But it's like that sort of a dynamic where it's massively dysfunctional. Like, it's a massive dysfunction when your family unit is doing everything that they shouldn't be doing, and it's just but you've got so many people elsewhere saying this is fine, and they're just your parents. You need to learn life, and you need to just be an adult, and you need to just grow up, and this, that, and the other. Don't be difficult, and this, that, and the other. Do you know what I mean? And that's one form of dysfunction that I've come across, where it's like, this is like life. This is what so many people go through. This is like a family of origin kind of issue. Do you know what I mean? That's one format of it. I've seen people's grandiose dysfunction in the sense where I have almost been kidnapped with my child, very near death, at what you would call an exit point, where you literally near death that much. Apparently we have many exit points, but very close, knowingly very close to death. I don't even want to go into that as a whole story. I don't even want to talk about it because it's going to tangent too far. That's another form of grandiose dysfunction, which often can involve the law. I notice lawful dysfunction, where you get they did nothing. Like, so the law didn't get involved, but they could have done. With the nature of what happened, if I would have, as I say, the law could have easily been involved in that situation. They weren't in the end, but we won't talk about it. So that's another type of dysfunction. I mean, I've seen dysfunction. I don't really want to talk about childhood, because I just feel like it's not something I don't really want to just like throw into there, because I feel like I'm sort of like exploiting my inner child a bit here, because I feel like childhood is just something that shouldn't be contained within this conversation. But a lot of people do experience it in childhood, especially through like familial dysfunction and stuff. Maybe we'll get to like certain things like that. I've kind of, as I say, made all this video about people being dysfunctional within circles. I don't know, when it comes to just being like in certain environments, I've seen it like where in like workplaces, like managers have just tried to overthrow like the entire workforce for no reason whatsoever, just for like power and control. Maybe they felt inadequate or insecure in what they were doing, and just kind of flattening each individual until they just didn't want to fucking be there anymore for like absolutely no reason, when they could have been happy, they could have enjoyed their experience, but for whatever reason that just wasn't the case. Because I just feel like happy workers are better workers, surely. That's another form of it, where it's like it's corporate. It's not corporate. Career-based dysfunction, where you can't really, again, it's like you can't really, because like more into adulthood that I get, I'm sort of like, you learn about life, don't you? You see the realities of what goes on, and as I say, that will give you information on what you're doing, in a sense. Anyway, so that was it. A career-based dysfunction. You can't really often do much about it unless you change your job. You can go higher up. Sometimes they'll listen, sometimes they won't. It depends on the situation. Oh, I'm being stalked by a wasp again. This happened last time I went here. So anyway, that's another one. So I don't know, I suppose dysfunction is like places you go and things you do. I think sometimes like I feel like a lot of it stems from narcissism though. I really do. I feel like a lot of it stems from narcissism and personality disorders, because it comes from a level of the core issues being that things become by these people, they distort things, and they don't admit to things, and they place blame on everyone else, and they don't take accountability, and they just cause havoc everywhere, and that is their goal, and they just love it, you know. And that ends up just basically bringing havoc to a lot of things. But I suppose there are like just different places in life where it shows up. Do you know what, actually, another example of this, which I will bring up, and my partner talks about this a lot because he's seen these people within work, that's all I'm going to say. People that have entitlement, student entitlement is a thing, especially when like they really have like high aspirations, like past the point of what you would kind of deem appropriate for coming out of uni, really being very, forward and aggressive with like what their, expectations are, rather than sort of like falling into society's standards, and sort of like working within that frame. It's very, I don't know if it's just like some sort of like eccentricity to do with like, oh, the world is harder than uni, so I can treat it with more vigor than I do my uni work or something. I don't know if there's some sort of like eccentricity there, but oh my god, it is really hard for to hear about that. I don't see it as much as I have done in the past. It has bothered me at a point, but that's another one where just like you have to just let people do their thing until they like learn, and some people, it's not bad to have high aspirations. I don't want to like justify myself during this conversation because it's so straightforward, and I feel like I'm more than justified at making these conclusions. I think, oh my god, relationships as well. I mean, this is a broad spectrum, so again, I don't really just want to talk about it, but when you talk about romantic relationships and you talk about like what you can involve yourself in them, and in like what's going on, it just differs. We all know that you can get fucked over in relationships, like that is just a given, and we know that that's just the way that can go sometimes. And I think it's tricky, and I think a lot of the time, no, I'm not even going to justify that as the answer, because I think I mean, I've said this before when I was talking about narcissism and stuff. When people have a cognitive deficits, cognitive deficits can also be present in people with like autism and ADHD and stuff, but this is why some people's behaviour is weird and why other people's behaviour isn't weird. And I feel like historically people with autism and ADHD have gotten such a bad name amongst the narcissists, that where narcissists are sat there with all of their cognitive distortions getting so shitty at everyone left, right and centre for no justified reason, and causing havoc left, right and centre, doing weird things and acting crazy. And it's like, then somehow people with autism and ADHD are the ones that act unhumanely and without, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not the case. I have literally worked with people with like severe ADHD and autism, and they don't do weird shit. They don't like some of them may have narcissism existingly, but it's not the autism and ADHD that makes people act that way. It's narcissism. And it's when people think that they're so clever and so smart, and they have to make this like maze of like conversation and experience for other people so they can feel powerful over the situation. And more than generally, they tend to look very idioty while doing it. And you think, honestly, like, I've seen it all before. Narcissists, in a sense, can be brought off dusk's back at this point, but I think, yeah, that's the thing, because I think this is where I think that I've never had an issue with this, but I think it does become a thing, as I get older to see how functional of an adult I am in comparison to a lot of others, where as an adult there are social rules. I would argue just like things that you should do that most people would do if they were healthy, like create boundaries with people, like like as in like adhere to boundaries with people, allow people to get on with their own lives, have their own experiences, and not kind of try and infiltrate other people's experiences. Make friendships, not fuck people over, not like go into relationships with people to get fucked over. Like, really, it's no different to school, honestly, if you look at it sometimes. Because, as an adult, right, and this is where the functionality comes in. This is where, when I was a child, I was just like, oh, I wish I could be an adult, because then when I'm an adult, I can, everyone's calm and everyone goes. And it's true. It is so true. When you're an adult, a lot of the time, unless you're going to be fucking caught up by the law or the wrong people, or the right environment to switch up your shit, you do grow up and you do move through the world most of the time, at least externally, with a face or functionality, and you have to conduct yourself, and that's just a life expectation, and it's not a problem for most people. But it's when you get the bad eggs. I just see it like you get bad egg everywhere. You get a bad egg everywhere. You get a bad egg in a workplace. This is where, you get a bad egg in the workplace. You get a bad egg in your community. You get a bad egg near where you live. You get a bad egg, in your family of origin. You just get a bad egg. You get a bad egg sometimes, and I'm sorry, it is what it is. Like, and I really think when you're dealing with a bad egg, you're not dealing with necessarily a bad life experience in and within itself. You're just dealing, or around even, I think is even the better thing to say, or dealing with people that are creating chaos around you. It's a bit, as I say, it's a bit of a confusing one to process, because in a sense, you have to look at it like, oh, it's affected me, so I have to deal with it as if it's affected me, as if it's been an issue that I've then had, happen to me. I think that's probably like the most important thing, because I think it's not really like, especially when you're dealing with people that don't understand the impact they have on people, or they just choose to have an impact on people that's negative, because of their own dysfunction or whatever the fuck else reason they have, to not feel justified in what you're doing. And I feel like, I don't know if I've touched on this fully, but when they talk about karma, I started to talk about karma, when people have a misunderstood perception because of their cognitive distortions, or not, as the case may be, just wanting to cause chaos within the world, and they try and make you pick up karma that isn't yours and stuff. Like, I have made friends with karma. Like, I'm okay with karma because I have generally good intentions towards life in general. But I think a lot of people, this is why levels make me laugh as well, though, because I have admitted before, I've had to connote other people's levels sometimes when I don't fully understand what they are, or how, the normalcies of that experience is. But as I say, groupthink is one aspect, and I know what's right and wrong within that. You can't justify something because it's a group norm. I'm sorry, like, it just doesn't work that way. For me, anyway, that's not how I do it. Anyone else can do things differently. But when it comes down to oh yeah, karma, like, it's like, or people will do anything. Like, if they can pick something up about you, especially narcissists, this is a narcissistic thing, if they pick something up about you, they will use it against you, and they will twist it and warp it into many different things. I would just say, just like, don't listen to it. You know what the truth is. If they haven't got the level to understand your mindset and the way that you went about your own life, that is honestly an issue within themselves, and it will only come back to them through negative karma. That's all I have to say on that. But I do think it does happen. I've not really experienced it, because I don't think I've had anyone really with the balls or the pure delusion to actually come about me in my life and actually, like, chuck my own chuck fake karma at me. Like, but it's weird. I know people do it. It's just, as I say, when it comes down to people that just get all up in your business, it's like, how delusional and sad must your life be that you can't do anything else apart from infiltrate my experience? That is so sad. That's what it comes down to. and these people are everywhere. And I think when you experience something, this is when you can look at stuff in a look at other people and other things in life and be like, okay, I've seen this before. And a concurrent thing that I have realised recently, and I have done a video about, is sometimes, I mean, I don't necessarily want to talk about it, but I'm just going to briefly just say what it is, which is basically it's not justifying the experience by accepting it. You have to accept what is around you, and you have to accept what you experience. It's not necessary to accept things that are nothing to do with you, but if you notice and witness and experience something, it's okay to accept it. It's okay to claim that trauma that has been inflicted upon you, though you didn't ask for it. And it doesn't justify the reasoning for it or the way that it happened. If anything, you're actually disputing it in a sense if you do that. And that is as far as it goes, really. If communicating with the universe is powerful and putting out your truth about whatever the fuck you're dealing with, big or small, when you talk about, you can't say, oh, the joy comes in the small things, and then when you experience small things, not see it as being significant. The small things do matter, and like, this is the big adult lifing things where you do experience people's dysfunction, you do experience people's bad shit. Like, I think it comes down to, other people have bad times as well. And I think, even if you don't choose to be involved in a situation, like, it will find you. I do find. And I have seen this happen before, actually, where I've literally just, like, isolated myself with, like, parenting, and then I just have a lunatic that's trying to break into my house. So, it does happen. If you don't find the lunatics, they will find you. And that is the truth. It's like anything. But I think it's, like, super important to just, like, find the amount of energy that it takes and be really kind to yourself when you have people, bother you and, like, get all up in your experience, because and do things that are harmful or try and traumatize you. Because this is another one I haven't really seen recently, and that is traumatizing people from a place where you didn't actually involve yourself, just, like, passively traumatizing people. It's like when people walk around and they just, like, you like streakers and stuff, and you think, oh my god, I can't unsee that. That must be, like, way less stressful than someone that's just going to overtly traumatize you for no reason whatsoever. Narcissists will love to do this for the very purpose that, obviously, if the focus is on the trauma that they've inflicted on you, they can blame you for that, and they can take the focus away from their own dysfunction and own inadequacy. That is the pure and only reason that this happens. So you have to, also, as I say, if it's a narcissism related issue, to put that into perspective and be like, the like velocity to which I have been traumatized is very much congruent, like, in sort of measure to the person's dysfunction that we're dealing with, and you will see that match up perfectly. But as I say, I'm not. It would be great if people like narcissists could just, like, decide to not interact with people that they are going to feel inadequate with, but that doesn't usually happen. They just decide to fuck them around instead. But as I say, I think it's just the most important thing is to just, like, reclaim your peace and your sanity and your truth in a situation. And I think it is important to heal yourself from wounds that you didn't inflict as well, because even though they might not be big wounds, and even though it may not be cataclysmic, the experience that you have, the small interactions that you have with people that do affect you are important to deal with, I think, because you shouldn't be walking around with wounds and like, discarding them, being like, oh, that's not important enough for me to, like, deal with, and then it ends up, like, looping around your mind and you feel negative. It's just important to just, like in a, like, healthy adult being like, I can deal with this. As I said before, I can deal with this, I can process it wasn't my fault, I can, like, literally choose moving forward. If I could have avoided anything, then I would do that. I can have my peace and my happiness and this, that and the other. I don't need to explain myself, I don't need to justify myself, I don't need to have another person bring me closure. I can find closure to the situation. That's okay. I don't need to worry about anyone else having any sort of feeling towards what I'm doing or have any ill judgment of me, because I have no interest in that either. That's fine if you choose to make a judgment of me. I'm not interested in what it is. If the person is lacking sense, it's unreasonable to assume that they'll just start bringing sense. I think, as I say, a lot of the time in people that are wounded or they have misunderstandings of things, it can be from a place where you know that they will learn. You can see what they're dealing with and you know that they will overcome that, and you can see that a year down the line they may look at you and be like, oh, maybe that person wasn't so like wrong. But you have to just be like, even so, like, this is my experience and I don't deserve to be attacked because of it. And as I say, when people misunderstand your situation, that's not justification to attack you until they feel better about it, you know. And sometimes people just assume, as I say, when you get like paranoid people as well, they assume persecution when it's not there. Or, you know, I don't like to gaslight paranoia. Sometimes people just are insufferable, so they can get attacked quite a lot, but at the same time, like, if someone's literally, you know, they assume the worst of people, and it doesn't mean that their mindset is true. If anything, it's just so far from the truth. And I literally did this video, I did it all in my video about continuing through dysfunction. But, you know, if you're focusing on yourself, that is the only thing that you can do if you're dealing with other people that are wrong. So yeah, I'm just going to end it there, because I don't know, I could just talk about like bringing good lights to it now and just being happy within these situations, because I think that's what it comes down to in the end. Bringing yourself back to yourself and not actually thinking, oh, like, I would want to just brew in this absolute dysfunction, because sometimes the fact is you have to live stuff out for a period of time until it's over sometimes, and you have to just be like, right, well, I have to just deal with this until whatever. I can move jobs, I can break up with someone, I can end this friendship, I can end this situation. That when that happens, then it's like, I think it's like there's a sense of like grieving as well, the difficult times that you've had and the times you haven't been able to like necessarily, like, I think, like, assert like what is right, because I think sometimes in just life in general it's just not appropriate to assert what is right in situations, because you have to like let them play out, and you have to let people learn lessons, and you have to let people find the consequences of their own actions. But like, it's about grieving all the times that you can't actually assert yourself in the ways that primarily you may want to, because it's just not appropriate. And that's valid, I think, because if you have an urge to do something and like, that's where the pain is psychologically. If you have separation in your mind, sometimes this is why things like imaginary situations can be like really, really powerful when dealing with like what should have happened and stuff. Creating like imaginary scenarios is very, very healing for just like getting that thing sort of met, that is needs met, that you can't really get yourself and you can't get appropriately. So that's helpful. I might have to do something to do with that, and as I say, before long after that you start feeling better and you can sort of carry on as if nothing happened and just be like, oh, you know, that was a sad situation, and, you know, prayers and whatever. But the fact is, like, some people don't deserve, they won't come to a conclusion. I've talked about this in my continuing through dysfunction video. They won't necessarily come, especially not at that time or any time before they learn lessons, they won't come to a place that they're going to find truth and justification that's valid in the situation. So you have to just find it yourself. And unfortunately, justice isn't always done in a situation. When that happens, you're just going to be like living on your own path, and sometimes you want to like go in there and help and make something right, do you know what I mean, and deal with it, and that's justified and it's good, shows humanity and it's healthy. But at the end of the day, it's just not always appropriate, and you can't, and it sucks. And it happens in a lot of different places, and I think it's really important to grieve that, and it's really important to look at what you have control over, and relief systems that contain it. Like, is it necessary to be overly, because a lot of people's life systems come from a place of eccentricity a lot of the time, and I think some people are eccentric for the passive, and some people are eccentric for like being in active spots of things. And then if you highlight that you being passive towards people in ways when you get into scenarios that are different but similar, to be like, okay, well, I can be more, forward moving in a situation earlier on rather than not. But sometimes, as I say, it's just not possible. It's more likely that you're just gonna have to wait it out, because that's just life. But sometimes there are things where you can just hold less space for people and like move more quickly and not justify people's dysfunction. I don't know, just whatever differences have got to be made in that situation. Because or become more passive in situations, you know what I mean? If you notice that you're getting worked up, like this was where I came to the conclusion of being like accepting of what you're going dealing with. Sorry, going past the bus car. Okay, sorry. So just like if you're justifying situations where, as I say, you have a lot of control over situations, and a lot of the time you don't have to deal with dysfunction too closely if you have certain experiences, and you don't have to really be traumatized by people when you can maneuver yourself. Sometimes things change you, sometimes they don't, and I suppose it's just down to the individual, as if whether you choose to, because a lot of the time as well with narcissists as well, like, their goal is to make you think that your world's going to be smaller, that you're going to be less open. I definitely believe in like keep your heart open even when people try and close it. Narcissists' pure reason is going to be to attack people for the very purpose that they want you to close down. They feel threatened of your personality. They don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to explore what life has to offer. They feel threatened by that. They don't like it. So to do that, you're basically making them win. But as I say, the measure to which these people traumatize you is usually the measure to which they are dysfunctional and things like that. So it doesn't make it any quicker. It's not like just by understanding that it just makes it all go away, because I think a lot of people do justify, like, and this is the truth, I've done it to people in a way. We all just move through life kind of shoving into each other to one degree or another. I don't mean physically, I just mean like psychologically. You go through the day, you're gonna rub someone up the wrong, like not really rub someone up the wrong way, but you're gonna affect someone in some way or another, and I think when you have these sort of experiences, sometimes like, I feel like justice happens naturally, and I think when you don't find, like when you don't look for it, like karma's gonna like obviously work itself out naturally, but God, my brain is so fucking slow after all this. But at the end of the day, you have autonomy to make your own choices, and you have autonomy to make your own like move in a way that you want to move. People aren't necessarily going to shut your life down with dysfunction, and I think it's okay to realise that people can act irrationally, and people can act unacceptably and from a place of delusion and trauma, and it still not be significant to you, and it just literally be a lesson of people are imperfect and they go through shit, and it shouldn't necessarily change you as a person significantly in any way. Yeah, I think that's what I'm taking out of this. And honestly, just like choosing to do like the self-care shit that you would do anyway, you know, and not being like, oh well, you know, and I think it's justified to allow yourself to go into a bit of a slump and be like, you know what, I'm really tired from all this, and I'm really tired from dealing with all this rubbish and all this dysfunction and all this, you know, all these people that are bleeding on me that I didn't cut. But obviously when you are and that's valid as well, I think just admitting being tired is fine. Oh my god, so much noise. I am actually getting off it now, but I think even so, when you've had that rest time, I would say ideally when you're ready to still move forward with your self-care and whatever journaling people do or whatever that you do to psychologically and like spiritually do your like spiritual hygiene and stuff like that, and psychological hygiene and stuff, just to like look into how you've been affected and, you know, what not, and what you can do to just like move forward without sort of allowing it to drag on you more than necessary. But yeah, I think I'll just end it like that, and it's okay to have space and time to just breathe and just relax. I think sometimes in the short term it can feel, you know, I don't want to go into anything other than like karma works itself out anyway, you know, and people just deal with shit the way that they feel is best, and I'm just gonna leave it like that because I think that's fair. But I think positivity is always helpful, to treat yourself extra nicely and to take yourself on a nice day or a nice walk, buy yourself some good food, spend time with people that you care about, and just have a good old bitch and a gossip if you need to, and yeah, just carry on with as much positivity as you possibly can.